Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. Today I want to talk about the Thieves Guild. And this is a really interesting subject to me because it feels like it's always kind of on the fringe of D&D, as it would be, but at least in the early days, there's very little detail given. And I want to kind of dig into what I think could be the good use of a Thieves Guild and ways I have used it, and just kind of generally talk about it. I'm in kind of an interesting situation with my home campaign. That is that we don't have thieves, that as a class anyways. And if you've watched any of my videos, or a lot of them, you probably realize I really like the thief class, especially in the OSR sphere. But we don't use it in my campaign for various reasons, and maybe that's a whole other video. But there are thieves, people steal, people rob, there's bandits, etc. And it kind of works out that a thieves guild might be a really useful item for me to have. Because what are thieves? Like, where do they come from? And especially the Thieves Guild, where does it kind of come from? My understanding is, and let me know in the comments below if you have any other information about this, is that it comes from the Fufford and Grey Mouser stories. There's multiple stories where they encounter the Thieves Guild in Lankmar, which is a big urban environment in the Nuon, I think is how you say it, setting of Fritz Lieber. So this is Sword and Sorcery. If you haven't read any of these books, read a couple. Did lots of short stories, really cool. But they use the Thieves Guild a lot. I think there's one called Thieves House, which is a really good one that kind of ties into the whole Thieves Guild idea. And when we look at the Thieves Guild in this case, it's almost a mafia type situation. That is to say that it seems like the authorities, the people, everybody kind of knows it's there, but it's not being raided by the authorities because it operates under a certain set of standards, probably giving bribes and other things to politicians or other people in power to be left alone, but also kind of keeping control over the kind of rampant, just a mugger in the alleyway. That is to say, the Thieves Guild has muggers, but they only hang out in certain sections of town, and they make sure that by paying off politicians that, and also by not letting muggers in the other sections of town, that there's never a problem. This is kind of the background of the Thieves Guild. And in order for it to work, I think you need to be running an urban type campaign. And where I'm headed in my campaign, it involves more and more of the characters politicking and being in cities. So I'm thinking about creating something similar. Now, I haven't used it, and it was funny when you look at OD&D, and I went back and looked at the books to see what's mentioned. You see a few things. In OD&D itself, before the thief exists in the Little Brown books, there's a mention of a thieves' quarter or something like that in the Angry Villagers section. Like, if the players are messing around too much, the thieves from the thieves' quarter might come after them, which is kind of funny since the thief's not a class, right? In AD&D, we see that a thief can have like a small castle set up at a certain level, but if they do, the Thieves Guild will come after them. And in Basic Expert, we see that when it talks about thieves, that they can set up a hideout, they call it, and maybe if they want, eventually set up a Thieves Guild, details up to the DM, right? So again, we're not getting a lot of detail. Now, I'm assuming, and I don't know this, that in second edition where they had all those splat books, there was probably a Thief Guild book, but I don't know about that. Let me know in the comments below if that's the case. And I'd be curious if it does exist. I probably should have looked at it before I decided to record a video, but maybe I'll check eBay when I'm done. In any case, I think that it's interesting because it's one of those things that's in the air, but we don't really have specific rules for it because it's really left up to the individual world. Because if we think about it, like, how is the Thieves Guild existing if you do a Points of Light campaign with small towns? They really can't be a Thieves Guild in that sense, right? It's just, you're more likely going to have gangs of bandits. A Thieves Guild requires an urban setting. And again, on that kind of note, if you're playing in an urban setting, you're playing magic users, where are they learning spells from? There's probably some massive libraries or possibly schools where wizards teach people, other wizards, for money, of course. But if you're playing, again, Points of Light, it's more likely, oh, there's a wizard that has a tower out in the forest. Try to convince them to teach you a spell, right? And I think this is one of the cool things about these kind of games is that it really just depends on your game, your table, right? What you have in your world. How do you want this to go down? So because of that, we can do so many different things with the Thieves Guild. On that note, let me talk a little bit about how I have used Thieves Guilds in the past, not in this campaign, but in previous ones. I've never set up a situation where the player characters had their own Thieves Guild. Really, until recently, we never played really high level in these older games. When I was a kid, we did, but that was just not something we were interested in. We didn't do the the high level politicking. Our thieves became master thieves and were just excellent at stealing stuff. They never set up their guilds. We just didn't do that. But, obviously people probably did with AD&D. In 5th edition, where I did run high level, we didn't have a thief per se, so that wasn't really an issue. But in games, again, like BX games and stuff, I've had Thieves Guilds be the opposition. That is to say that I've had the Thieves Guild be a kind of thorn in the PC's side when they're looking for certain treasures, or their, maps are stolen, or this kind of stuff. A friendly NPC goes to the PC saying that this treasure map was stolen from them. Can they recover it? And basically, that's how I've involved the Thieves Guild. They're not something for the PCs to wipe out completely because they're too big, but they're something that they can bump up against. And in some ways, there's kind of this like gentleman's agreement, if you will, that like you have this wrestling match or fight with the Thieves Guild. Whoever walks away with the treasure map in the end, that's fine. It's not going to be an ongoing war per se, because I never wanted to run stuff that way, and my players weren't interested in it. But I could see that being a thing. I actually misspoke to say that I haven't used them in this campaign, because as I was remembering, the players did actually interact with the Thieves Guild. And in this campaign, I used them as kind of an underground gambling and smuggling operation. And the player characters actually used them to escape a city. And now we're looking at from the other end. If you need things done, you need things forged, you need things interpreted, you need maybe an item taken that you can't get your hands dirty, hiring the Thieves Guild, operating with the Thieves Guild can be a really interesting way to use it. They're a resource, a illegal resource, but a resource nonetheless. The Beggars Guild or the Thieves Guild, the Beggars fall into the Thieves Guild, which I'm pretty sure they do in the Farfin Grey Master stories. Their ears listening, right? The Thieves Guild pays off servants in nobles' houses to get information. The Thieves Guild knows when people are coming and going. They know that this person has a gambling debt, right, and had to trade their jewels for it. These are the kind of things, blackmail, stuff like that the Thieves Guild knows. Now, your player characters might not want to get involved in that generally if you're playing a fairly heroic campaign, which I normally do, but they may need that help. And in fact, in OD&D, when they first introduced the thief, I don't have it open in front of me, but they do say something to the effect of thieves have to be neutral or chaotic. Lawful characters can hire them for specific missions that have like lawful purposes. So the idea of hiring thieves immediately comes in. And again, that's not hiring the Thieves Guild, but hiring a thief. So in this case, a guild might be the best way to find them, right? So this is one of these situations where they could be rivals, they could be something you use, they could be both. On one adventure, you might be paying the Thieves Guild to do something for you. On another one, you might be butting up against them. And this is, again, why I think that kind of gentleman's agreement thing where it's like, well, you got the map, you won, we will both live to fight another day, is a good way to use them. But I've got another idea that I really want to dig into. A Thieves Guild campaign could be super interesting. And I've done things where we've done like, 1 shots and 2 shots and 3 shots where it's like all one class, so all fighters, all magic users, all thieves. I've done that. But when I think about a Thieves Guild campaign, I don't think that everybody needs to be a thief. In fact, you could run a Thieves Guild campaign with no thief class at all, like I have in OD&D. That is to say, the Thieves Guild is more of a place that hires and sends the PCs out on quests, and the PCs work for them. So they're neutrally chaotic, maybe. They are kind of, they're working in the underworld. They're doing those things, right? They're spying. They're doing these various missions, and they could be fighters. They could be magic users, and they could be clerics if you do, God of Thieves kind of cleric. And you could really play it up. And what's nice about this, I think, is this would work well for the type of campaign where you have drop in, drop out, or you play kind of sporadically and you're doing it kind of here and there. So a campaign that is a collection of one-shots, if you want to think of it that way, where every time you get together, the Thieves Guild sends you on a mission. Something a little bit less, I should say, sandboxy and more like, oh, we're playing tonight in the Thieves Guild campaign. What's our job, right? And you're sent to do the heist, whether it be to steal something, to get information, to get something back, to rob a caravan, to guard something. The Thieves Guild could be used for such things, right? If you were, let's say, a noble and you had a gambling debt and you were trying to take some of your jewels and pay off something, and you had to bring them to another town or meet somebody somewhere, you might hire some thugs to protect you and not bring your normal guards because you don't want the people to find out about it, right? Again, this is information that you're hiding, so you're hiring an illegal person to help you. And this could be the role of the PCs. And of course, you could do all thieves if you wanted to. That would be also very interesting. I could see doing that using my hand-to-hand combat rules that I've got, so it's a little bit less lethal, and also it favors thieves a little bit, and doing an urban campaign where you keep it kind of more fisticuffs and less killing, right? Unless it's an assassination. That could be a really fun way to play. And I say that mostly because if you use the OSR thief as is, they're going to not be very good at combat, relatively speaking, with, not being able to wear heavy armor and, having less hit points. So, there's going to be hard times to take out guards and plate mail. So you got to kind of think about how that works. All that being said, I think the Thieves Guild is a really interesting artifact of the sword and sorcery fiction that helped inspire Dungeons and Dragons. And I think it could be used a lot more. Not wait till you're 9th or 10th level and you can start one, and then you have a faction, which could be cool, but why not have them in the world, interacting with the PCs as you go? Wouldn't it be interesting to have, throughout the entire campaign, especially if you're running an urban campaign, PCs doing favors for being rivals against this Thieves Guild that's kind of in the background? So again, not a big bad that they're out to get rid of, but that's just there, and it's sometimes you're on their side, sometimes you're not. And then when they get closer to name level, they're offered positions. And then they can kind of take it over, as opposed to starting a little castle and then having a war. That could also be really interesting, possibly even turning that character into an NPC for the next campaign. So lots of fun stuff with Thieves Guilds. I would love to know what you think. I know there were some games. I think Thieves World was a game that's just strictly thieves, which is kind of interesting, I think. Let me know. I know it was a series of novels, but there was also a game. So let me know what you think about Thieves Guilds, how you've used them, how you think you could use them. Do you just think it's not worth that kind of stuff? Do you not do that kind of thing because you do all dungeon crawls? And do you think that my statement of it only really works well in a relatively large urban environment is accurate? Or do you have a way that you think a Thieves Guild could operate in a Points of Light campaign? I'd like to know that in the comments below. Let me know. Anyways, check the description. You'll find a link to my Patreon if you want to support the channels, and also my Discord if you want to continue the conversation there. I'll talk to you soon.